Hello and welcome to this SwiftUI video. My name is David Thorne. In this video, I'm going to show you all about how to download images using URL session, but specifically to show in an image view that we're going to create using the likes of state objects, published and also combine. With that said, let's just get straight on, get started. Let's just create an iOS project, and this example is only an iOS project, and we're going to call it resource loader, interface SwiftUI, language Swift, and we'll just go from there. Save it in the folder, and we'll put it onto a iPhone here. So the question that you might be asking is, why don't you want to use async URL? Well, I want full control over this, and async URL doesn't give me enough control, and I can write my own code far quicker. All right, so with that said, let's just go ahead and create our image view here, and we want then var body some view, and inside of here we're just going to say progress view in the beginning, and we're going to make a text in here saying loading in. This is going to be the text that we're going to display when we are actually loading the image, right, whilst we're downloading and loading the image. Okay. And here, when we update our the interface, you can see here that we've got our spinner. Now that doesn't help us. We want to have a URL that this image can download. So let's just say we want then our URL here, and it's going to be optional. We'll create an initializer here, and we'll just say like this. And inside of here, we'll download a URL. And I already have a image URL ready to go, so let's just put URL string up here like that and plop that in there. All right, it doesn't do anything right now because we haven't downloaded anything. So the art of this is to say, hey, if you have an image, right, and we're going to say view model dot we're going to call it resource. If you've got a resource, then we're going to show it, right? Else we're going to display this progress view. And obviously we're going to add this view model in a minute, and we're going to display a UI image view, and it's going to be a UI image. And this image resource is going to be, so it's view model.resource is going to be a UI image, which means we can display it here, and this is going to be resizable. Sorry, we want my mistake, we want an image there like that, and this one's going to be resizable, and we're just going to say scale to fit. Now we have a problem, we don't have a view model, so let's just come here and create our view model. This view model is going to want to be observable object, because we're going to want to put it as a state object as well, and at one point we're going to need combine, so we'll just use it now. The resource that we're looking at is obviously this resource here, so we can come here and already say published var and resource, and this wants to be a generic type, all right, and we're going to say up here with a generic type parameter up here, because if you're going to use AppKit, then you're going to need a NS image rather than a UI image. That's why we're going to make it generic, for the possibility that you are multi-platform or support multi-platform. So we're just going to say here resource, and this is going to be optional because we're going to set it as we go through. All right, so now we need to create this one, a view model inside of our image view. So for that, we're going to say state object. Remember that this image view owns this view model, right? It owns it, and it is allowed to create it. It doesn't come from anywhere else. It's the owner of this one view model. So we can come here and say private, and we can say view model, and it's going to be a view model, and in this sense it's going to be of image view as well. And we're going to instantiate this with inside of the init as well. So we have to use underscore view model here, and here we're going to have to say state object, and we want to then just say view model, because we're going to need to alter a couple of things in a minute as well, which I'm just forward thinking. And we come to here to say then the view model, and we need a generic parameter, and this is then going to be a UI image. All right, so our view model needs a var, naturally. There we go. So we now have our view model, and we need to be able to tell this view model to load this one URL. with that said, we can just make this a load function here, and we'll say the URL that we want to load, and we'll give it optional as well. For that reason, we can literally just say if URL is URL, else we can just say return, right? Because we're not going to do anything if it's a nil URL. On that note, we can come here and say URL session shared, and we're going to say data publisher for request. Why are we going to use request? Because we want caching, all right? And the URL request has cache policies. So it means we can say here request.cache policy and reload cache else load here. So if it's already got it, then just give us the cache, else load it instead. So it means that if we go offline, we don't have to keep reloading that one same image because we've got it stored in the cache. So now we want to say try map, because we could have some problems here, and we're just going to say data response. So first things first, we've got to handle the normal HTTP stuff. So we're just going to say HTTP, or say response as HTTP URL response. And sorry, we need that as an optional there. Put the question mark in the wrong place. And we're just going to check that we actually downloaded it perfectly fine with a status code of 200, and we're going to return. Now, we want to return a UI image from here with this resource. So we're going to have some way within inside of our view model, right, of mapping this one resource to a UI image. And so what we're going to do in here is within inside of our initializer, we are going to say the resource mapper, and this is what, let's just show you here. We're going to say resource mapper, and this is going to take a resource, it's going to take some data, and it's going to return a optional resource. And so let's just put data in here, and now we can just copy and paste this to be a property here, removing escaping, and self.resource mapper is equal to resource mapper happy days, and we'll make this resource mapper private. And so now we have this resource mapper, which means that this try map is going to return an optional resource, right? And so we have to say nil here because we don't have a success of 200. So the likelihood is 0 that we're going to have any data there because it was a bad request. So next thing that we're going to do is check that is the data empty, and if it is, we're going to return nil. Obviously, we're going to go on forward if it's not empty, and this is where we are now going to use our resource mapper, and we're going to pass it the data, right? So that now says that if we do have data, as long as the status code was 200 and the data is not empty, we're going to call our resource mapper, giving it some data and sending back the resource. We're going to let someone else handle this mapping and so on, right? So the next thing we want to do is we want to receive on the main run loop, and we are then going to sync on this, and on the completion here, we can just check the completion. The only thing we need to really check is the failure. We don't care about the actual error itself, and if there is an error, we can dump the resource that we had already. Otherwise, we can just say default break here. All right. Otherwise, when we receive the resource, we can say self.resource is a resource, and then we can now store this with inside of some cancellables here, and we're going to make this private. Actually, we won't make this private because we're going to need it shortly, and so we're just going to pass it to there. So now we see that when we say load, we're going to download the information, we're going to download the data from that one URL, and if we get status code 200, then we're going to continue. If we don't get empty data, we're going to continue. Otherwise, we're going to return the resource mapper response that was passed in from the init. All right. So next thing we can do is we need to come to our image, our view model here, and here is where we just say image view from data. All right. So this is where we're doing the actual mapping, and right now we're using UIKit, and that's why we're doing generic, because we could make this image view to be ready for suitable for AppKit by having an NS image or a UI image. But for the time being, we're just going to use it like this. All right. So now we have this. We want to be able to say view model load and pass the URL in. Right. And when we do this, boom, you see the image turns up. Right. And the great thing about this now is that when we have to reload it, this cache policy is going to just send it straight back. So if you've got all of these different items, lots and lots of items with their own different images inside of a list, and this one image view gets displayed once again. First of all, this request has said to the URL session shared cache, all right, that you should cache it first of all and give us the cache first all the time rather than loading it. So we know we're not only going to do the request once all the time that the cache is empty or has space for that one image. Secondly, we've got a state object here, which means our view model is going to be persisted over multiple views of this same image view and so on. So we'll handle it in a couple of ways, all right? So with that said, if you did want to change this to work for NS image in AppKit, then this view model would work perfectly fine already, no problems. The only thing you would have to change here would be NS image and then say NS image here instead. And you'd obviously have to support AppKit too. Now you would need to have, let's just put it on I don't have a project for the Mac, but if you had the Mac, you would have some compile time errors right here. So with that said, if there's only one thing really more to handle, is that if your internet connection is really slow, or that image is really big, or that one server is slow, at any one point, the downloading of that data is slow, and this image needs to be removed, right? You've got to have some way of cancelling this one request, because you don't want multiple requests going in the background when it's not required. For that reason, on the progress view, when it does get removed, so we're going to say on disappear here, we are going to say, we're just going to say cancel here, right? And if we come and have a look down the bottom and we just remove this, and we come back to here and there, you'll see that it says cancel here, right? Because this progress view has been removed from the view, which implies that viewModel.resource has a resource now, which means that we can come to viewModel and say the cancelable, and we can just say init once again to reset it. This means that we already know if it has something inside of this set, and that it hasn't already got to here completed, then we know that it's not finished yet. But if it has finished and we do have a resource and we empty this set, then we know that we don't need this one session anymore. However, if we're in the middle of downloading still and it hasn't yet got to the completion or the received value, then we can just empty this one set, which means this is going to be cancelled, and which means we don't have to worry about any extra requests going on. So the second this progress view gets removed from the screen, we cancel all requests. But if this image view is still being shown, and we now have a resource, our image gets shown instead, so we don't care about resetting these cancelable here. All right. With that said, it's just a super easy thing to do. All you just need to be able to do is copy and paste this one view model, and it will work with all image views. But it will work with all images, and it will download the data asynchronously as well. And it doesn't care about whether or not this URL is empty. And like I said, if it's not empty, and the cache will save it anyway for you. So it do one request and one request only. You could enhance this a lot by adding a custom cache to it and so on. But that's another video. With that said, I hope that you've got something out this one video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share. And if you do have any questions or feedback or concerns, then as always, let's start a conversation in the comment section down below. I hope that you enjoyed this one video. I hope you've got something out of it. With that said, my name's David Thorne, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao, ciao, and goodbye.